right. I think we're a session before lunch, Jim, so. This is when I was asked to talk to Jim about AI in the enterprise. I was really excited because I get to, for a change, ask the questions of Jim. Usually we're in board meetings and he's asking me the hard questions. So, so this is a role reversal. And anyway, Jim, we're going to discuss a little bit about technology and a little bit about business and harnessing that. And there's no better person than you to do that. But why don't we start really at the beginning, which is when did you develop the interest in AI? What have you experienced over the years in this technology?
Wow, then we have to go some years back, I'm afraid. Not that I'm that old. Actually, before I joined SAP as a trainee in 1990, I graduated from university in Denmark in '89. Actually, the same year as the internet was invented. Little did I know at the time. And I was really this, math guy. I was in business school, but I loved optimizations. And I spent a lot of time on my master thesis, which was about, a very complex optimization algorithm to solve a quadratic, which is a very complex problem. And at the time, my vision was that I wanted to go out as a mathematician and optimize the world. And there were three problems with that at the time. Number one, I had never really seen the world. So I was, in theory at university. So I figured maybe I should go out and visit the real world before I start optimizing it. Secondly, at the time, there wasn't really the data necessary to understand and optimize the world. And thirdly, the compute power was not really there. I remember when I was building my algorithm for solving this very complex problem, I built a program in Fortran, and I used the mainframe of the university, and this allowed me to start my program before Friday after 6 in the evening, because it would consume the entire CPU for 48 hours. And so nobody could access the mainframe while my program was running. And I had to kill it again Sunday at midnight, because otherwise Monday morning wouldn't work. Now you fast forward 30 years. We now have enough data, and we now have compute power. I did the calculation. My iPhone has 1 million times more compute power than the mainframe that I used to run my program on. And what took 48 hours at that time on a mainframe now takes 2 seconds on the iPhone. And now you add to that the NVIDIA chips and the AI, GPUs. We kind of have solved these two problems. So my interest in AI really was sparked again when I left SAP. I spent more than 20 years there to kind of get the transactional layer in order. And I began to actually engage in what I call real companies, if I may, companies that have real physical presence. I became chairman of Maersk, the largest shipping company in the world. And I became chairman of Siemens, one of the largest industrial companies in the world. And suddenly I found myself in this world of lots of data, which wasn't really used for anything, and lots of compute power, and a huge opportunity to revisit the AI. So the first thing I did was 2016, I took online classes at Stanford to understand what is AI. And I began to understand some of these algorithms, and as a mathematician, I thought it was very interesting. And then, of course, I got a famous call from Tom Siebel in 2019, and he said, why don't you join C3? Now, before all of that happened, of course, I had experienced AI then in the companies which I was active in. My first real experience of applying AI in an industrial space was at Siemens. This is back in probably 17 or so, where we first had an approach to hire a bunch of data scientists in a central place at the headquarters, and that was not very successful. We then did an approach where we decentralized these smart people and we put them in the factory where the engineers that built the trains were actually present. And suddenly, we had a massive increase of value. They got, of course, all the data feed from the trains. And before, they were looking at it as data, but now they sat next to the engineer who built the train. And he could say, well, this spike in electricity is from the door, and it shouldn't happen. And with the combination of the contextual information of the engineer that built the train and the data scientists and the AI models, they were able to develop algorithms that would predict 10 days in advance if a door would jam with 97 or more % likelihood. Now, if you can do that 10 days before it happens, suddenly you go from having an incident with a running train that then cannot run anymore because the door is not closing and then you can't run the train, to actually fix it in the 10 days you know it might happen, and you dramatically increase utilization of the train. So for me, that was the first understanding of, wow, this is massively valuable. It will change business models. It will change the way we look at assets. It will change the way we think about the digital transformation, which is not just about capturing the data, but using the data in ways that give us predictive capabilities. Now, I've seen many of these projects in the companies I've been active in. I've also seen very advanced ones in Northvolt, which is a battery production. You have this flow from chemicals, basically, to coding, to stacking and assembly. And at the end of this very complex process, you have a battery that may or may not work. And if it doesn't work, you wonder, where was the mistake? Was that in the stacking? Was that in the, in the coding? Was that in the chemicals? And no human being can understand that complexity, but AI can. And so if you measure all of these processes, you begin to see the patterns that create batteries that don't work. And so that's an example of a huge value application that I've seen. But maybe my biggest learning is about the approach. In most of the cases that I've seen, AI starts as skunk work in various departments, where somebody has learned a tool, begins to use a tool to create something that looks amazing in the first round. And before you know it, you have chaos, and everyone is using different tools and accessing data that they shouldn't be accessing. And then what seemed to be this huge value opportunity becomes a chaotic situation that actually increases risk for a company. And you really want to avoid that. So that's kind of the good and the bad learnings that I have from some of the industrial experiences I have.
Super. Thank you for that, Jim. And maybe let's talk about large language models for a moment and get your thoughts on those. And obviously, as I think Dan Smalowitz from Con Ed said, large language models have created significant interest in AI. And from your position, Jim, frame large language models and your thoughts on those, if you could, for a moment.
So large language models, is somehow a gift and a curse at the same time. I was first super excited about these models. I got early access, and I tried to use this, and I was blown away with the relevance of the answers, the human nature of the answers. I remember a moment I was making pizza with my son in my kitchen, and he also showed interest. He's 25. And he said, we were listening to Dire Straits, and he said, hey, ChatGPT, could you please make a Dire Straits song about a man and a boy making pizza? And it was a great song. and so, the first reaction was, wow, this is amazing.
Did you publish it?
We didn't publish it. We didn't even try to sing it, but we had fantastic pizza that evening. Yeah. Now, that created an inspiration for me. And if you look at the adoption rate, it's like when I studied at Stanford online, I couldn't even explain to my friends what I was studying. And now suddenly, with ChatGPT and other large language models, it was available to everyone. I think OpenAI had 1 million users in 5 days. They now have 180 million users that kind of understand how to interact with AI. They don't understand the algorithms, but they kind of interact with it. So in that sense, it's super interesting. And why? Because it's right there at your fingertip. It kind of seems to understand what you're asking. It kind of seems to understand, giving you good answers, in particular creative answers. And it's super easy to get started, which wasn't the case before. Now, the disadvantage, and where I used to say, okay, would this then become the AI for everything? And I go, no, I don't think so. I actually asked ChatGPT a few months later, who is Nikolai Snabe, which is my son, who made the nice song from Dire Straits. And it said, Nikolai Snabe is the former co-CEO of SAP, now chairman of Siemens. And I go, wow, that's amazing. He's only 25 years old. Are you sure? And then ChatGPT answered, well, I only have data until September 22. I said, well, then he was only 23. Are you sure you're not talking about Jim Snabe? And he said, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Now, for a song, it's kind of okay, as long as it rhymes. But to run your supply chain, or to make predictive maintenance on a military aircraft, maybe that kind of, oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, is not going to be sufficient.
Right.
So I actually believe that we need to combine that with the specialized AI that has deep knowledge, that goes into facts and not some, what's the most likely next word in a sentence, that uses the knowledge and not some hallucination to answer the question if we want to use AI in business. So it's almost like for consumers, it's great and fun, and let's make some more poems. But for business, it is not sufficient to do what we need to do to optimize the companies we run.
So it's interesting because you're talking about the specialized AI models, which Wholesome has talked about, Con Ed has talked about, to identify failure of equipment. We'll hear from the U.S. Air Force on identifying equipment component failures, supply chain optimization, production schedule optimization. And then you have the large language models. Again, from your perspective, how do these things come together?
For me, it's almost like two different worlds. One is a generic intelligence that acts human by, with high likelihood, predicting the next word. It might be untrue, but it sounds right.
Yep.
But it understands what I'm saying somehow. And specialized models which are built on a specific purpose with a domain knowledge, like the Siemens example. This is like, predicting the failure of a door on a train. It's a very, very different model. It's not about the next word. It's about likelihoods and predictable models that learn from the past and give you that capability. And it's almost like you have a horizontal layer of human interaction where we use language instead of complicated screens. And below that, you have specialized AI models that have the domain expertise necessary to be knowledgeable, not just guessing a next word. It's almost like I've tried to introduce this concept of, there's a large language model, we all know that. But what if we had what I call a large knowledge model, which actually is a set of specialized domain-specific AIs, like the apps that C3 is building or customers are building, that have the depth of knowledge of the company and the history of the company to enable predictable capabilities within each of these domains. Now I predict that these worlds are coming together in a way where the large language model becomes the interface to the human being, because that way you get human-like dialogue instead of complicated screens. We saw the SAP screens earlier. I'm sorry for that. My mistake.
But
it was better than Oracle at the time.
All right, I know where this is going to go. Are you kidding me?
And now you can have this, Google-like, ask me any question you want, and I will find the knowledge for you, not just the next most likely word. And that's where you need the large knowledge model. And if you think of it in these terms, it's almost like you can benefit from the public available large language models to understand and interact with any user. And that is the public domain type AI. And then you build inside of your enterprise the large knowledge models, which is a series of specialized, contextually aware AI that goes deep and understands knowledge. And when you connect the two, you get the perfect world of a human interface that's super simple and very human, but knowledge to represent what the company knows. Imagine Siemens. It's a 176 years old company. Imagine that you have everything that company knows since 176 years available to every single employee in natural language. Now that latter part, the large knowledge model, that you don't share with anyone. That is your competitive advantage. And that way you kind of get the two worlds, in front of the firewall, language dialogue, and behind the firewall, your knowledge available to anyone at any time. Wow, that becomes, I think, the future. And I think that's what you call generative AI.
That is, the good news is we're aligned with your vision, Jim. So as a board member, you're happy that we're actually delivering on the vision, and it's C3 generative AI. And you heard Nikhil talk about it, which is the LLM is the interface to the person, and then we can orchestrate actually not just invocation of AI machine learning models, but also optimization models, engineering physics models, information retrieval, if you will, from any sources and any systems in order to basically help a person make a better decision. So good news is we're 100% aligned.
Yes, and I think it's about, when you connect those two, you translate what is the user actually asking, and now you need to find the most relevant answers to that question. I believe you use a distance model.
Correct.
To find the most relevant answers to that, and then this explainability, why is that the answer, and where does that come from, becomes, for me, super important, because then I know what I can rely on. What is the truth in this? What is the likelihood that this is the right answer? And I suddenly empower a user rather than eliminate the user with a black box where sometimes the answer is wrong and I don't know about it because it doesn't tell me how likely this answer is.
Right. So the explainability and the confidence in the answer.
For business, that is super important.
Key.
For a song from Dire Straits, it doesn't matter so much how it came up with that last rhyme. And I think that's the difference. Will large language models be used inside the enterprise? Yeah, to write emails and letters. So there will be a white-collar productivity gain by adding these assistants to the word processing or the emailing. So finally we can stop doing all the emails and then do some real work while the AI is taking care of the emailing between people in the company. Would be nice.
Can I switch gears, because I want to cover get your kind of input on advice to CEOs, to management teams on harnessing AI in their organization, and really kind of focusing on how do you mobilize the operation to actually do this.
Yeah, and I think that's where the tricky question lies. It's how to do this. As I said in my introduction, I saw many examples that produced amazing demos, but they never scaled to anything but a demo. Because everyone used their own access to data, their own tools, and eventually you had a zoo of chaos where nobody could scale to an enterprise level quality. And so it's almost like you need to get going. My biggest advice is that you need to, first of all, understand what kind of data sources you have. In most companies, you have incredible amounts of data, but nobody really understands what you have. Now, some companies then depart on, let's clean this data. And I go, well, that's going to take 3 or 4 years. So if you do that before you start applying AI to it, you'll be long gone because someone else will be doing this.
Yeah.
So it's almost like you need to find areas where you have relevant data and you begin to deploy AI applications, simple ones at the beginning, ideally pre-built ones like predictive maintenance is a well-documented area of application, and you get some experience. With that, you learn more about your data, and you expand the scope of the data. Eventually, you get one AI platform with one set of tools. And it's almost like you need to be a dictator on, you have to use this platform with these tools. You can't go about using anything else. Because otherwise, you'll never be able to deliver on the vision of these verticalized AIs that are deep and contextual. They have to be built on the same type of app platform that accesses the same type of data. And you add the generative or the large language model on top of that, and this becomes a holistic, it's almost like an innovation layer on top of all the transactional systems. Now, this is probably the biggest challenge, and it's hard for me to sit and say because, of course, all of the transactional system providers will say, well, we also do AI, whether that's SAP or Oracle or anyone else, of course they do. But this layer of AI applications will need to be iterated at high speed. You saw Nikhil talk about the next deliveries, which was like, now and this summer and this fall. And I'm like, oh, okay, so we're going to upgrade the SAP systems 3 times this year. That's not doable, You want to stabilize that layer, and you want to build an independent layer on top of that so that you can access all of these systems. And then you have this rapid innovation on top of the stable base.
Yep.
That's where you need to get to. And therefore, I'm recommending, look at the data structures you have, begin experimenting, build capabilities, and then over time, become self-sufficient. Because this AI, in particular in the vertical space, is almost like the strongest competitive weapon we've ever had in business. You don't want to outsource that. You want to insource that. You want to master that. And therefore, you need a very productive platform so that you can do things in weeks or months, not in years. Because if you do it in years, you're already gone. And maybe that's my biggest recommendation, speed. I mean, recently, Sora was announced, this text-to-video producer. And what was the company's Shutterstock, which is a company that offers you access to pictures and videos? Their share price went down dramatically, just like that, because who would want to do this manually if everyone can do it with an AI? And I think that's the speed you have to have in mind. You don't want to be late to be the one in your industry that demonstrates the true value of AI way beyond large language models in these deep expertise areas. You want to be the first there. Those who do that will have the disruptive power. I often say you want to be at the table, not on the table.
I think that's, so with the right technology platform, you can go as fast as you want to, frankly.
Most companies use most of the time fighting, which tool to use.
Correct.
Or getting access to the data. If you have one consistent platform, the tool discussion is over. And secondly, once you connect it to one data source, everyone can leverage that, and suddenly you get speed. So it takes a little bit more time at the beginning, but then suddenly you get this exponential deployment, and you take over the control yourself. That's what I would do.
And so just to kind of double click a little bit on the change management and the how quickly you can go with the change management. So the technology piece we've trivialized. Now we're focused on the change management. You have seen some pretty dramatic disruptions in companies that you've been chairman of the board on. And so those disruptions have required you to move very quickly. I'm referencing Maersk, but you can talk about any one of these companies. How do you get the organization to move fast?
So I think the last couple of years have really been, let's say, challenging for many reasons, not least because the world we operate in became unpredictable, right? We started with COVID, and we had wars and supply chain issues and what have you. And the management style of the past was one of taking a strategy and then building a business plan. And then in the boardroom, we would spend a lot of time checking that we execute the plan. But these last 3 years, the plan was always wrong. Like 6 months or 3 months after it was built, there was a new situation that totally changed everything. And so you actually need to build a level of resilience and agility, and you have to stop planning so detailed because the plan is always wrong. What are we celebrating when we reach a plan? What if it wasn't ambitious enough because the market changed? Or what if it was way too ambitious because the market changed?
Right.
So I'm arguing that you need to lead this change by being very thoughtful about a vision for what could this industry be if we leverage intelligence and the data we have to its full potential. You know, autonomous transportation, renewable energy systems that are smart, individualized therapy in healthcare. It's like, bring that dream out so people get inspired. Wow, that is what we could become. And then do fast iterations, 3-month cycles, and learn, and learn, and learn, and learn, and learn, and you become exponential in your ability to execute. If you come with an exponential plan into the boardroom, you will all be dismissed for a hockey stick plan, and it's never going to work. And so we don't do that. We come with these linear, ambitious plans because then we know we can overachieve. And we need to do the opposite. We need to have a big dream about where could this industry be if we leverage this kind of technology to its full potential. And then we iterate in fast iterations, build deep and horizontal, and eventually empower the entire organization.
Super. Thank you for that. We have 1 minute left, so any parting thoughts on where this goes, or the technology, or any other?
Well, I've been in the IT industry now since 1990. And I've always been a technologist. I've always been excited about the opportunity. I am convinced that this wave of AI in its various forms is by far the biggest opportunity for business ever. And if you think of it that way, it becomes a CEO matter. It becomes the topic in the boardroom to be driven. It becomes the topic to be the first to exploit and benefit from. And it becomes the biggest transformational opportunity and challenge in the history of your company. If you think of it that way, you're already taking a very ambitious approach. Now, I talked about this idea of a large knowledge model. That is building the knowledge inside of your company and making your company predictive instead of reactive. Anyone who does that better than competition will be reacting better to changing market conditions. I think the next piece is what I would call a large action model. So imagine you have a large language model to interface with any human being, a large knowledge model to find the right answer, ideally in a predictive capability, and a large action model that brings the decisions you make back into those transactional systems so you can change what's going on in your company much, much faster. That is the trilogy that I believe will happen. You add to that some of these, Vision Pro, where you suddenly can deal with a lot of information in one view. I mean, we are up for a ride. And it's super exciting. Now, the last thing I would say, and I think that's important, is while the opportunity is enormous, you have to do it with a high degree of responsibility. Think about the implications and the impacts this can have. and apply the values of your company to that, so you don't misuse this technology, but use it. We are lucky to be leaders in times of such radical change. Over the next 10 years, our value chains will become more sustainable, more relevant, more individualized, much cheaper. We'll utilize assets much more than we've ever done before. And that is the tremendous opportunity. But with that comes also a responsibility as a leader to lead that change and to do it in a way where not only does your company get better and you lead the transformation of your industry to be better and more sustainable and more relevant. I think this is the answer to also make this world a better place. And it's not going to be easy from a geopolitical point of view, that's for sure. So I think business leaders like you have an enormous role to play in showing how this can be done at scale in a responsible way. Thank you.
Super. Jim, thank you very much. Really appreciate your insights. Thank you, sir.